My name is Sarah, and if you had seen me that Christmas evening, you probably would have thought I was the most ordinary person in the room. I was sitting quietly on the soft brown couch in our family home, Oak Ridge House, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. Outside, snow covered the garden, and the tall oak trees stood still like silent guards. The house itself had always felt special to me. My dad, Richard, used to say it carried the charm of Europe and the strength of America, though I never fully understood what he meant until much later. Inside, everything was warm and loud. My mom, Elena, was moving between the kitchen and the dining table, making sure everything looked perfect. My younger brother, Liam, was on the floor surrounded by wrapping paper, shaking every gift like it held some kind of secret treasure. The smell of roasted food filled the air, and soft music played in the background. It should have felt peaceful. It should have felt complete. But my mind was somewhere else. My laptop sat open beside me, its screen glowing softly. Numbers moved up and down in quiet rhythm, charts shifting in ways that only I seemed to care about. For the past 2 years, this had been my world: markets, risks, and decisions that no one else in my family really understood. I didn't blame them. To them, it probably looked like I was just staring at lines and numbers all day. Still on that thing, my dad's voice cut through the room. I looked up slowly. He was standing near the fireplace, holding a glass in his hand, watching me with that familiar expression, half disappointment, half disbelief. "Stop messing with stocks and get a real job," Richard said, shaking his head. "Leave investing to the experts." The words weren't new. I had heard them many times before. This time, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded slightly and went back to opening a small gift my mom had handed me. It was easier that way. Because the truth was, I hadn't told them anything. Not about the long nights. Not about the risks I had taken. Not about the small amount of money I had turned into something much bigger. And definitely not about the investor who had been quietly trusting me with more and more responsibility. To them, I was still just Ava, the girl who played with stocks. I gently placed the wrapping paper aside and smiled at my mom, pretending everything was normal. But inside, my thoughts were moving fast, like the numbers on my screen. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. For a second, I hesitated. Something about it felt different. Important. I stood up quietly and walked toward the hallway, away from the noise and laughter. The moment I answered, the world around me seemed to slow down. "Hello." A calm, professional voice replied. "Miss Ava?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Daniel Wright, CFO of Blackridge Capital." My grip on the phone tightened. "We need to inform you," he continued, his tone steady. "The anonymous investor is pulling all $410 million. Everything inside me froze. The warmth of the house, the laughter, the music, it all faded into silence. "What?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. There was a short pause before he spoke again. "He has decided," Daniel said carefully, "that you are the only one he trusts to handle it now." I leaned against the wall, my heart racing in a way I had never felt before. Christmas dinner was still going on just a few steps away. But my life had already changed. I didn't sleep that night. After the call, I walked back into the living room like nothing had happened. My mom, Elena, asked me to help bring dishes to the table. Liam was laughing at something on his phone. My dad, Richard, was still by the fireplace, talking about work like he always did. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. $410 million. And somehow, it was now my responsibility. I kept my face calm. I even smiled a little, nodded at the right moments, and sat through dinner like I always did. But inside, my thoughts were racing faster than I could control. Questions kept coming one after another. Why now? Why me? And most of all, what happens next? I didn't say a word to my family. Not that night. Not the next morning either. Some secrets are not easy to share, especially when no one ever believed in them to begin with. The truth is, my story didn't start with millions. It started small. Very small. 2 years ago, I was living in a tiny rented apartment in a busy city I liked to call my version of America. It wasn't fancy. The walls were plain, the kitchen barely worked, and the heating failed more often than it should. But it was mine. And more importantly, it was where I started building everything. I had exactly $3,000 in my account. That was all. No connections. No mentors. No one guiding me. Just me, my laptop, and a decision to try something different. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. I read articles, watched hours of videos, and studied charts until my eyes hurt. I made mistakes, big ones. I lost money in my first few trades and almost gave up more than once. There were nights I sat on the floor, staring at my screen, wondering if my dad had been right all along. But something inside me refused to quit. Slowly, I started to understand how things worked. Patterns began to make sense. Risks became clearer. I stopped chasing quick money and started thinking long-term. And little by little, my small account began to grow. $3,000 turned into $5,000. $5,000 turned into $12,000. And then one decision changed everything. I invested in a small company that almost no one believed in. It was struggling, overlooked, and considered too risky by most people. But I saw something others didn't. I studied it for weeks before putting in a large part of what I had. It was terrifying, but it worked. Within months, that investment grew more than I ever imagined. It wasn't just luck. It was patience, timing, and a bit of courage. That's when things started to change. One evening, I received an email. No name. No introduction. Just a short message. I've been watching your trades. I'd like to work with you. At first, I thought it was a joke. Or maybe a scam. But attached to the email was proof, real data, real numbers, and a small transfer request. $50,000. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Why me? I wrote. The response came hours later. Because you don't think like the others. That was the beginning. I agreed to manage the money, carefully, cautiously. I treated it like it was my own. I didn't take unnecessary risks. I didn't chase trends. I followed the same discipline that had helped me grow my own account. And it worked. Weeks passed, then months. The amount increased. $50,000 became $200,000. $200,000 became $1 million. I never knew who the investor was. Every message came through secure channels. No personal details. No meetings. Just instructions and trust. It felt strange, but I didn't question it too much. Because deep down, I knew this was my chance. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not even Sophia, my closest friend, who lived just a few blocks away from my apartment. She often came over with coffee, talking about her job and life, while I quietly managed money that wasn't even mine. To her, I was just working from home. To everyone, I was just Ava. But behind that, I was building something much bigger. Now, standing in my old room at Oak Ridge House, holding my phone after that call, everything felt different. The investor wasn't just adding more money anymore. He was stepping away and leaving everything to me. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I stepped outside into the cold air and called the number back. It rang twice before Daniel picked up. Miss Ava, he said, his voice calm as always. I need to understand, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why is he doing this? There was a pause on the other end. Because, Daniel replied, you've made him more money than any expert we've ever worked with. I closed my eyes for a moment. That still doesn't explain why he's leaving, I said. He isn't exactly leaving, Daniel clarified. He's transferring control. To me, I said quietly. Yes. My heart was beating fast again. There's one more thing, he added. I opened my eyes. What is it? If you accept this, Daniel said, your life will change completely. New structure, new responsibilities, and relocation. Relocation. I repeated. You'll need to move to America. That's where operations will be based. I looked out at the snow-covered road in front of me. America. A new place. A new life. And if I say no? I asked. Then everything will be reassigned, he said simply. I knew what that meant. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But it also meant leaving everything behind. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill my lungs. For a moment, I thought about my family inside the house. About the life I had known so far. About the doubts, the silence, and all the things I never said. Then I thought about the journey I had already taken. I didn't come this far to stop now. When do I start? I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. You already have. The decision was made the moment I said yes, but the reality of it didn't truly hit me until a few days later, when I stood in my room at Oak Ridge House, staring at an open suitcase on my bed. Clothes were folded neatly inside, but I hadn't packed much else. I kept picking things up and putting them back down, Old books, a photo frame, a small lamp I used to keep on during long nights of studying charts.
It wasn't just packing. It felt like I was deciding which parts of my life I was allowed to take with me.
Outside my window, the snow had started to melt. The oak trees no longer looked frozen in time.
Everything was slowly moving forward. Just like me. Telling my family had not gone the way I imagined. It started at breakfast.
My mom, Elena, was pouring tea, and Liam was scrolling through his phone, half asleep. My dad, Richard, was reading something on his tablet, as usual. It felt like any normal morning, which made what I was about to say even harder.
"I'm leaving," I said. 3 words. That was enough to make everyone look up.
"What do you mean, leaving?" my mom asked gently. "I got an offer," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady.
"A serious one."
"I have to move to America."
Liam sat up straight.
"Wait, seriously? That's huge."
But my dad didn't react the same way. He lowered his tablet slowly and looked straight at me.
"What kind of offer?"
I hesitated for just a second before answering. "Investment management.
A firm wants me to take control of a large portfolio."
"How large?" he asked, his tone calm but sharp. I swallowed.
$410 million.
The room went completely silent. My mom's hand froze midair.
Liam just stared at me like he was trying to figure out if I was joking. And my dad, he didn't say anything at first. Then he let out a short, dry laugh.
"This is nonsense," Richard said.
"No firm hands that kind of money to someone with no experience in the real world."
I expected that reaction. Still, it stung. "It's real," I said quietly.
"I've already been managing part of it."
His expression changed slightly.
"Since when?"
"For a while," I admitted.
"I just didn't tell you."
That didn't help.
"If this was real," he said firmly, "you would have said something before. You don't just wake up one day and get handed millions."
I didn't argue.
Instead, I stood up, walked to my room, and came back with my laptop. I opened the contract, the records, the transaction history, everything. Then I placed it in front of him. "Read it."
He looked at the screen without speaking. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Then another. I watched his face carefully as he scrolled.
The confidence in his expression slowly faded. The doubt turned into something else, something quieter. By the time he finished, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "This," he paused, searching for words, "this is real."
"Yes," I said. No one spoke after that. The silence wasn't loud or angry. It was heavy, full of things we weren't saying. My mom was the first to break it. "When do you leave?" she asked softly.
"In a week."
Liam shook his head in disbelief.
"That fast?"
I nodded.
"It has to be." The next few days passed in a blur. I spent most of my time preparing documents, calls, planning everything for the move. Daniel was in constant contact, guiding me through the process. He was calm, professional, and always one step ahead. "We've arranged your apartment," he told me during one call.
"It's close to the office.
You'll also have a workspace ready from day one." "Office?"
I asked. "Yes," he replied.
"You'll need it." Everything was happening so quickly that I barely had time to process it.
Sophia was the only one I told outside my family.
We met at a small cafe in the city, the same place we had been going to for years. She sat across from me, listening quietly as I explained everything. "You're serious?" she said after a long pause.
"I am."
She leaned back, shaking her head.
"Ava, this is insane."
"In a good way, but still insane."
I laughed softly. "I know."
"And you're really leaving?"
"Yes."
She looked down at her coffee for a moment, then back at me. "You better not disappear on me."
"I won't," I promised. There was a short silence before she smiled.
"You've been hiding all this from me." "A little," I admitted.
"A little," she laughed.
"You've been managing millions while I thought you were just working from home."
I didn't know how to explain it, I said.
"Well," she replied, "you better start explaining everything when I visit you."
"Visit?" I asked. "Of course," she said.
"You don't think I'm missing this, do you?"
For the first time in days, I felt something light again. The night before I left, I walked through Oak Ridge House one last time. The living room was quiet. The fireplace was off.
Everything looked the same, but it felt different now, like I was seeing it from a distance already.
My dad was standing near the window.
I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, he said without turning around.
I didn't think I would either, I replied. He nodded slightly.
You're taking a big risk.
I know. He finally turned to face me.
For a moment, neither of us spoke.
Then he said something I didn't expect.
Just don't fail because you were afraid to try, he said. I blinked, surprised. That's all I'll say.
It wasn't exactly support, but it wasn't doubt either. And somehow, that meant more than anything else. The next morning, I left.
The car ride was quiet. My mom hugged me longer than usual before I got in.
Liam told me to call him as soon as I landed. My dad just gave a small nod. No long speeches. No dramatic goodbyes.
Just a quiet understanding that things were changing. As the car drove away, I looked back at Oak Ridge House one last time.
Then I turned forward.
Hours later, I arrived in America. The city was everything I imagined. Tall buildings, bright lights, endless movement.
It felt alive in a way I had never experienced before.
My new apartment was nothing like my old one. Glass walls, a wide view of the skyline, and a silence that felt both exciting and overwhelming. I placed my suitcase down in the middle of the room and stood there for a moment.
This was it. No more hiding. No more small steps.
Just me, and $410 million to manage.
My phone buzzed.
A message from Daniel. Welcome. Your office is ready. We begin tomorrow. I looked around the apartment once more, then walked to the window. The city stretched out in front of me, full of unknowns, risks, and opportunities.
For the first time, there was no one telling me what I could or couldn't do.
This was my responsibility now.
And whether I was ready or not, there was no turning back.
By the time 3 months had passed, my life no longer felt like the one I had left behind. It felt like something entirely new. Every morning, I woke up in my glass apartment, the city stretching endlessly outside my window. The noise, the lights, the constant movement, it had all become familiar. What once felt overwhelming now felt like energy, like something pushing me forward. My days were structured, intense, and precise. I spent hours in my office, a quiet, modern space overlooking the skyline. The desk was always clean, except for my laptop and a notebook filled with numbers, ideas, and plans. Every decision I made carried weight. Every move mattered. $410 million. At first, the number had scared me. Now, it motivated me. Daniel remained by my side through it all. He never interfered with my decisions, but he always made sure I had everything I needed: data, reports, access. Over time, we developed a quiet understanding. He trusted me, and I trusted him. You're not like the others, he told me one evening as we reviewed a report. You've said that before, I replied, not looking up from my screen. Most people chase quick results, he said. You build something that lasts. I paused for a moment, then continued working. The truth was, I didn't feel special. I just did what made sense to me. Still, something always stayed at the back of my mind. The investor. The one person I had never met. The one who trusted me with everything, and then disappeared. Will I ever meet him? I asked Daniel one day.
He didn't answer immediately.
Then he said, maybe.
That maybe stayed with me.
Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The portfolio grew steadily under my management. I didn't take unnecessary risks. I didn't rush decisions. I followed the same discipline that had brought me here in the first place. And it worked. But success didn't answer my questions. If anything, it made them stronger. One evening, as I was about to leave the office, Daniel walked in.
There was something different about him. Not his usual calm tone.
Something quieter.
More serious.
He wants to meet you, he said.
My heart skipped.
Who? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. The investor. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Tonight.
I finally said, yes.
Everything inside me tightened at once, nervousness, curiosity, and something I couldn't quite explain.
Where? I asked. Just outside the city, Daniel replied.
I'll take you. The drive felt longer than it actually was. The city lights slowly faded behind us, replaced by quieter roads and larger houses, each one standing alone with its own story. I sat in silence, staring out the window, my thoughts running in circles.
What would I say? What would he be like? Why had he chosen me?
Eventually, the car slowed down in front of a large, elegant house.
It wasn't flashy. It wasn't overly modern either.
It had a kind of quiet strength to it, simple, but powerful.
Something about it felt familiar.
We stepped out of the car, and I followed Daniel to the front door.
My heart was beating faster with every step. He stopped before entering and looked at me. "He's inside," he said.
Then he opened the door. The house was calm, almost silent. Soft lighting filled the space, and everything was carefully arranged, as if nothing was out of place.
We walked into a large living room, and there he was, standing near a window, looking out into the dark. His back was turned.
For a moment, no one spoke.
Then he turned around, and everything inside me stopped.
"Dad!" I whispered. Richard stood there, calm and composed, like he had been expecting this moment all along. "Yes."
"Ava," he said quietly.
I couldn't move. I couldn't think. All the questions I had been carrying for months, suddenly, they felt too small.
"You," I struggled to find the words.
"You were the investor."
He nodded.
Daniel stepped back silently, leaving the room. I took a slow step forward, still trying to understand what I was seeing.
"Why?" I asked. It came out softer than I expected. My dad looked at me for a long moment before answering.
"Because I needed to know," he said, "if you could do it on your own." I shook my head slightly, overwhelmed. "You tested me."
"No," he replied calmly.
"I gave you a chance." I let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. "A chance." I repeated. "You told me to stop. You told me to get a real job." "I had to," he said. "Why?" I asked, my voice rising just a little. "Because if I supported you from the beginning," he explained, "you would have relied on me. And I didn't want that." His words hit harder than I expected. "All those times, you didn't believe in me," I said. He took a step closer. "I always believed in you," he said. "Just not in the way you expected." I looked at him, searching for something in his expression. "You watched everything?" I asked. "Yes." "Every decision?" "Yes." "And you never said anything?" He shook his head. "This was your journey," he said. "Not mine." Silence filled the room. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. "You built something real," he continued. "Without my name. Without my influence. That's what mattered." I felt my eyes burn slightly. "You could have told me," I said quietly. "And what would that have changed?" he asked gently. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew. It would have changed everything. The risks I took. The confidence I built. The person I became. "I needed you to believe in yourself," he said. "Not in me." I let out a slow breath, trying to take it all in. For so long, I thought I was proving him wrong. But the truth was, he had been watching me prove myself right. "You trusted me with $410 million, I said finally. A small smile appeared on his face. "You earned it." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You're unbelievable." "Maybe," he replied. "But you're ready." That word stayed with me. Ready. I looked around the room one more time, then back at him. Everything finally made sense. Not just the money. Not just the opportunity. But the reason behind it all. That night didn't just answer my questions. It changed how I saw everything. Because for the first time, I understood. This was never just about investing. It was about trust, growth, and becoming someone who didn't need permission to succeed. And as I stood there, no longer just Ava the daughter, but Ava the investor, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.